In this video, I'm going to demonstrate 4 different methods commonly used to pick up and knit stitches. This is one of those techniques in knitting where there's multiple ways to achieve similar results. So that's why I thought it would be helpful to demonstrate the 4 of the most common methods that I've seen for picking up and knitting so that you can compare the results and see which you might want to try on your next project where you have to pick up and knit stitches. So here are my 4 little swatches that I've done with the 4 different methods. And as you can see, in terms of the results, they all look pretty similar. They were so similar, I had to put little labels on them so that I knew which method I had used for each of them. But what I'm going to do is on the left side of each of the swatches now, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate for you each of the methods. In method 1, we're going to be picking up and knitting along the very edge in the hole between the first and second column of stitches. So let me show you what that means. So I'm going to turn the work as we're going to be picking up along this edge. So first let me hold this up. So here is our column of edge stitches. I'm just going to insert my needle right here. So you could see on the edge, a stitch looks like a V, and even though it's always harder to tell along the edge, the shape of the V, you can kind of see it here. There's the V's. Now in the second column, it's more obvious, the V stitches going up. But basically what we want to do is between this first column of V's and this second column of V's, that's where we want to insert the needle. And you can see when I separate it, you can see that hole. So I'm going to take my needle tip and I'm just going to insert it through the hole and then through the entire fabric along the edge. Then I'm going to take my yarn and I'm going to drape it over the top of the needle. And then I'm going to pull the needle through, bringing the loop up just like this. Now let's go into the next one. So again, if you sort of pull up on it, you see the hole right here. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my needle right into that hole and knit. And then here's the next one. As you can see, the horizontal strand kind of separates each of the holes that you're going to be going into. So then I'll go into this one. So that's 3. Now, when you're picking up stitches along a vertical edge like this, often a pattern will say to pick up at a certain ratio. 3 stitches for every 4 rows is really common, so that's what I'm going to be doing here. So I picked up 3 in a row. I'm going to skip the next hole. So if I separate this with my fingers, I can see that would have been the next hole, but I'm going to skip that and I'm going to go into the next one. So right here through both and knit it. So then I'll go into the next one. And so I would just continue in this manner, going all up along the edge here. And if you have a hard time seeing it, you would just sort of separate it a little bit with your fingers and put your needle through. And there we go. So when I turn this over so we can see the finished side, it's a really nice edge and I'm not seeing too much looseness or anything like that. And on the back, it doesn't feel too bulky either. So that is the first method. Now let me show you the second method. In method number 2 that I'm going to show you, we're going to be picking up into both legs of a stitch, but omitting the very edge loop. So let me show you what I mean by that. So here is my second little swatch. I'm just going to turn it. So before, in method 1, we were going into the hole in between the 2 columns, right? We were going in right here. So we were including the very edge. So when I talk about the edge loop, I'm talking about these stitches right here. Now in this method, we're going to be going into both legs of the V right next to the edge loop. So not into here, but if we turn the work just a little bit, see how we see a V right there and then a V right here? That's what we're going to be going into. This is my preferred way of picking up and knitting stitches. And so if you've seen any of my other videos on this topic, most likely you've seen me do it this method. I like this method because I find it's just the easiest, because you really see, as you can see here, those V's of the stitches are really easy to see. And so I find it an easy way, and I think it provides a nice clean option as well. So it's just my personal preference. So I'm going to take my needle tip and I'm going to go into both legs of the first V, just like that. Let me move my yarn here. And so then, just like we did in the first one, I'm going to drape the yarn over the needle and then bring that first loop through. So that split a little bit. So when that happens, you just start over again. So let me go into both legs. Here we go. And then I'm going to go into the next V. So again, I'm going to insert my needle into this leg and then into this leg. Then into this leg and into this leg. And I like to hold my left hand like this, so the V's, as you can see here, are very obvious going up here. So then I'll wrap the yarn and I'll knit that stitch. And just like we did in the other swatch, I'm going to skip the fourth. So the fourth would have been this V right here. So I'm going to skip that and go into this V. And then into the next one, then into the next one. And so I would just continue in this manner all the way up to the top. And so as you can see on the finish side, it also provides a really nice clean edge. It does go in a little bit more on this side, but that does provide less, in my opinion, a little bit of less looseness along the edge. And the inside might be slightly bulkier than in the first method. So it may depend on your yarn choice and the denseness of your fabric, whether or not you want to go with this method. But personally, I've never minded having just like a little bit of extra bulk on the wrong side of my fabric to have a really nice clean edge. So that's just the second method. Now let me show you method number 3. So in the third method I'm going to show you, it's very similar to the second method. However, we're just going to pick up into one of the legs of the V stitch, not into both. So let me show you. I'm going to turn my little swatch here again. So if you recall, in the previous method, so we weren't going into the very edge, right? We're going into the V right next to it. So if we're not going into this, we would have been going into both legs of this V stitch here. But instead of doing that, I'm going to go into just this leg. So if you're looking at the V's like this, I'm going to hold my, if you're looking at the V's like this, we're just going into the right side of the V. So the leg that is the closest to the edge, but again, is not on the very edge. So I'm just going to go into that leg here. I'm going to take my yarn just like we did with the other two methods, drape it over the needle, then bring the loop through. Then I'm going to go into the very next one and do the same thing. Go into the next one, again, wrap the yarn around the needle just like you would to knit and knit it. Then I'll skip the next one and go into this one. Then I'll go into this one and then into this one. So you would just continue all the way up in the same manner. And again, if we flip this over, from a distance, it looks the same as the others. I do notice when I hold it up, there is a little bit more, I can see some light coming through here. So there's just a little bit more looseness along here compared to method number two. But if you're finding that method number two is creating too much bulk, this could be another option to consider. And I've done this sometimes when I am working with, let's say, super bulky yarn, and I find that picking up both legs of the V is just causing too much bulk. And if I don't like the look of picking up along the very edge, like we did in method one, then this is an option to consider. So in method number four, we're actually going to be picking up the horizontal strand that's in between the first and the second column. So let me show you what I mean. I'm gonna turn my swatch here. And if you remember from the first method, when we're looking at the edge here, in the first method, we had been going through the holes. So when you separate these out, you can see we were going through each of the holes here. We were kind of going in between the horizontal strand. But in this method, we're actually going to be picking up the horizontal strand, and that's what we're going to be knitting. But in order to pick those up, we're actually going to use the other end of the circular. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it through the strand just like that. Then I'm going to take my other needle and insert it into the stitch just like you would to knit. And then just like our other methods, I'm going to drape the yarn over the right needle and then bring that loop through to knit the stitch. And so then you're just going to go into each of those strands. So I'm going to pull that so I can tell, okay, that's my next one I want to go into. And then I'll knit it. Then let's see, the next one will be this one right here. And so I've done 3 in a row. And just like we did with the other swatches, I'm going to do 3 for every 4. So that means I'm going to skip the next one. This would have been the next one. So instead, I'm going to go into this one. That would be the next strand. And then I'll go into the next one. Again, if you're having a hard time seeing it, you just sort of separate the fabric a bit. See, I can tell this is the next one. Just like that. And so I would just continue in this manner, going all the way up. So here's the next one. There we go. And so if we look on the finish side, it really creates a nice edging along the side here. And similar to the method number 2, there's maybe a little bit of bulk, but really not that much at all. And I don't see any looseness whatsoever on this. So it's just another potential option to consider. So I hope seeing these 4 different options for how to pick up and knit your stitches has been helpful. And depending on the yarn that you're using and the fabric denseness and your gauge, you might find that there are certain methods that work well in certain circumstances and others that work better in other circumstances. So hopefully one of these might be helpful for the next time that you need to pick up and knit. Happy knitting!